The wind dragged a low whistle through the cottonwoods as Silas Roan stood at the edge of his fence line, eyes fixed on a rust-colored horizon. The board beneath his boots were old and split like the ribs of some buried beast. He spat dust from between his teeth and folded the letter back into its envelope, creased from too much handling. The handwriting wasn't his. Wasn't even close. He turned, coat flaring like a crow's wing, and strode back toward the house where Miss Dell sat on the porch gutting mesquite beans with a dull knife. She didn't look up when he stepped into her shadow. "You wrote it," he said. No question in it. Miss Dell nodded once, her long braids silver in the afternoon glare. "Ain't gonna apologize. I didn't ask you to. You didn't ask for much of anything lately. Just road circles and stare holes in the earth." Silas lowered himself onto the porch rail, hand resting on the butt of his old coat out of habit more than threat. "I ain't a husband," he said flatly. Miss Dell's eyes, dark, knowing, lifted from her work. "No, you're a man running out of things to bury." The sun kept sinking. Somewhere beyond the hills, coyotes yipped at nothing. Silas looked past the barn, past the paddock, past the rough fields that barely held root. The land was dying slow, and he was going with it. She laid the knife down, careful. "She's coming on Friday's train. 3 o'clock. He scoffed. "Mail-order bride. That what I'm worth now." She answered with scripture and offered no demands. That's more than most women got in M these days. He said nothing for a long time, the kind of silence that settled like dust between ribs. Miss Dell waited. She'd seen him stitched up, burned, near-drowned, and worse. But the silence, that was a wound that kept bleeding. Later that night, he unsaddled his gelding and rubbed him down slow, fingers brushing over the animal's ribs like counting bones. He thought of the woman, Evelyn March. No photograph, just a name and a line about faith and hardship. He didn't want her, didn't want anyone. And yet something about that letter scratched at the back of his mind like a nail in soft wood. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. When it came, it was filled with gunfire and smoke. The same dream, the Red Creek, his brother's body slumped in his arms, eyes wide as the sky. The war had ended, but nothing had ever truly ceased. The day of her arrival, he shaved with cold water and stitched a tear in his coat's lining, rode out with only one saddlebag and a tin of rolled tobacco. Fort Davis wasn't much, one main street, a saloon full of empty men, and a train station that looked like it had been built just to rot. He leaned against a post as the train hissed and slow, dragging itself like a wounded snake. The doors opened. She stepped down like she didn't know the earth would catch her. Tall, gray dress trimmed in black, gloves that didn't hide the calluses, hairpin but unruly, and a single tear, just one, slipped from her eye as she looked around like someone recognizing a place from an old, unwelcome memory. Silas watched her for a moment before approaching. When he did, he tipped his hat, but didn't smile. "Evelyn March?" She looked at him, really looked, eyes the color of flint and just as sharp. "Yes," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I'm Silas." She gave a small nod and didn't ask for his hand. He respected that. They rode back in silence, dust trailing behind them like a second thought. Her bag was light. She sat straight in the saddle, not ladylike but soldier steady. He noticed a faint red mark beneath her left glove when she adjusted her grip on the reins. Ms. Dell was waiting on the porch with a face like she'd seen this story before and wasn't sure she liked the ending. Evelyn dismounted without help. She looked up at the ranch house, not large, not pretty, but standing, and said, "This will do." Silas raised an eyebrow. "You're not what I expected." "I wasn't expecting much either." They didn't speak again that evening. She took the spare room, unpacked one dress and a worn Bible, and shut the door. He didn't knock. At midnight, he sat outside with a bottle and the stars. The wind picked up like it always did before a change. Behind him, through the window, he saw her silhouette in candlelight. She stood still, facing the wall, her hands pressed together, not in prayer, but like someone holding back a flood. He drank and watched the sky, wondering what kind of woman cried stepping off a train to nowhere, and whether that was the kind of woman who could stay. The land didn't offer answers. It only held silence. The rooster cried before dawn, but Evelyn was already up, boots laced and apron tied. She moved through the kitchen like a woman who'd memorized other homes, other routines, her hands quick and deliberate. The floor creaked beneath her steps, with groaning beneath new weight. She didn't touch anything she didn't need to. That Silas noticed. From the corral, he watched through the open window as she broke eggs, beat them with a fork, poured them neat into a cast-iron pan. She didn't hum, didn't curse either, just worked, silent as snowfall. Her back was straight, posture proper, but not fragile. There was something taut into her shoulders, too controlled to be accidental. Ms. Dell sat at the table watching her, brow pinched. She didn't speak much either, just stirred her tea with a carved spoon and sipped slow. Evelyn served without a word and ate without complaint. She never once looked to Silas for approval. That, too, he noticed. Later that morning, Evelyn stepped out to the yard and stood a long time facing the hills. The horizon rippled with heat, the kind that made men see things. Her fingers gripped her skirts, and she tilted her face toward the wind like she was testing it for omen. "You expecting someone to come riding over?" Silas asked, voice low. "No," she said without turning, just measuring the quiet. It was too careful a sentence to be innocent. Silas said nothing more. He led the horses out and saddled his gelding, more from habit than need. Evelyn walked to the trough and ran her hand along the rim, fingers trailing in the water. A scar showed on her wrist again, faint but deep, like something that had cut her more than once. She noticed him looking, covered it. "I can milk cows and so," she said. "I don't mind hard work. I didn't ask." "I know." He mounted the horse. "Then why tell me?" She looked up at him. "Because you keep waiting for me to run." And he was. The days turned long. She folded into ranch life like someone trained for exile. She cleaned, cooked, patched fences when no one asked her to. She cut her palm on a nail but didn't cry out, just wrapped it in a rag and kept working. Ms. Dell offered her a poultice later, but Evelyn shook her head. Let it harden. At supper, Ms. Dell finally spoke with weight. "You got soldier's hands." Evelyn sipped her water, face unreadable. "I buried one." "Did you love him?" "No," she said, and that was the end of that. Silas leaned back in his chair, watching her from beneath his hat brim. There was no vanity in her, no flirtation, no play acting, just steel hidden behind tired eyes. And still, something fragile flickered when she touched the piano keys after supper. She didn't play melodies, just 3 notes, slow and low, like testing if the world remembered her song. Sheriff Joe came the next day, dust-covered and riding hard. He greeted Silas with a nod and spit the grit from his teeth. "You got company I should know about?" Silas folded his arms. "Maybe. Town's buzzing. Got talk of a woman out west. Fled eastward, name change, maybe dangerous. Bounty posters vague, but the pay ain't." Silas didn't blink. "She with a kid?" "No. Just a story about a rich husband who vanished. Folks think she pushed him into the river and prayed he didn't float." Silas glanced toward the house. Evelyn stood behind the curtain, still as stone. "She been trouble?" "Not yet." "Watch her anyway. Folks don't lie on posters for fun." After Joe left, Silas didn't go inside. He sat by the porch post, turning his flask over in his hand. Eventually, Evelyn stepped out. She didn't ask what was said. He didn't offer. "You know the worst thing about the past?" she asked. He grunted. "It don't stay buried. It just grows quiet and waits for footsteps." Silas looked at her closely. "You done something that's following you?" "I did something to survive." "That the same thing?" She didn't answer. The wind pushed her hair loose, and for a moment, she looked like a ghost someone tried to forget. "That night," Evelyn dreamt loud. Ms. Dell heard through the walls, a choked sob, then silence. She found her sitting by the hearth come dawn, fire burnt down to ember. "I don't ask what you ran from," Ms. Dell said. "Then don't," Evelyn replied. But Ms. Dell wasn't finished. "I knew women like you in the war. Carried knives in their boots. Slept with one eye open. Men called them many things, but none of it true." Evelyn stared at the flame. "He said if I ever left, he'd find me." Ms. Dell crouched beside her. "And what would you do if he did?" Evelyn lifted her eyes. "Pray," he don't bring a second bullet. Silas didn't sleep that night either. He sat beneath the stars, rifle across his knees, watching the edge of the land. The moon cast long shadows, and somewhere out there, a coyote howled like it was mourning something it never had. He knew then he believed her. Not because she cried, but because she didn't. Because whatever trail she'd burned behind her was long and full of ash, and still she dared to come here. That took a kind of strength war had taught him to recognize. But he also knew the past never rode alone. It always carried a second horse. And someone, somewhere, was bound to follow. The rain came sudden, like it had been holding its breath for years. Thunder cracked wide across the horizon, and the dry earth drank greedily. Evelyn stood beneath the porch awning, arms wrapped around herself, dress clinging to her legs. She didn't flinch when lightning split the sky, didn't blink when the thunder chased it. Silas watched her from the barn's open doors, one hand on the bridle of a spooked mare. He'd seen soldiers freeze that same way in the trenches, still outside, screaming inside. The kind of quiet that came after too much noise. When the storm eased, she didn't go inside. She sat on the porch steps with soaked skirts and hands knotted in her lap. Silas approached slow, boots squelching through mud. "Storm bother you?" he asked. "No, just reminded me I'm still alive." He leaned against the post beside her. The rain softened to a whisper. "My husband used to drink on nights like this," she said. Said storms made the devil crawl out of him. Silas didn't speak. She wasn't really talking to him anyway. One time, he broke my arm for asking why dinner was cold. He drew in a breath, slow and controlled. "That the night you ran?" "No," she said. "That came later, after he broke my faith." She didn't cry. She told it like reading from a ledger, just numbers, just facts. But her fingers trembled when she unwrapped the cloth around her hand. Beneath the stained bandage, the wound from the nail had festered purple and raw. Silas knelt and studied it. "You didn't say it was this bad. You didn't ask." He stood and disappeared inside, returning moments later with Miss Dell's ointment. Evelyn hissed when the salve touched skin but didn't pull away. "You're lucky," he said. "This land don't forgive infection easy." She met his eyes. "What about you? You forgive easy?" "No." She nodded like she expected that. The next morning, Miss Dell poured thick coffee and set the cup beside Evelyn without a word. Her silence wasn't suspicion anymore. It was something like quiet respect. Evelyn had bled, worked, burned her fingers on cast iron, and still rose each day before the sun. In the West, that was the closest thing to prayer. While Silas rode fence line, Evelyn gathered wild herbs with Miss Dell. They moved through the brush in rhythm, as if some old wisdom guided their steps. Evelyn didn't ask what each leaf meant. She knew. Miss Dell noticed. "You learned this out east?" "Not east enough. My mother was half Shawnee." She hit behind Lason's sermons. "You don't hide it." "No point. Blood remembers." They stopped at a gnarled mesquite tree. Evelyn knelt, dug roots bare-handed. "You bury anyone?" Miss Dell asked. Evelyn paused. "3. My father, my mother, and him. Him got a headstone?" "No. He didn't deserve one." Miss Dell offered no judgment, just helped gather the roots. That evening, the first sign came, boot prints by the creek. Deep, recent, heavier than any of theirs. Silas crouched beside them, jaw tight. A single brass casing lay half buried in the mud. He rode back fast. When he dismounted, Evelyn stepped out before he could speak. "Someone's near," she said. "I felt it." "Why would someone be following you, Evelyn?" Her mouth opened, then shut. She looked toward the hills. "You said your husband disappeared." "I made him disappear," she said. "He beat me, held me like property. I waited for him to sleep, and I put him in the river." The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It was reverent, heavy. "I walked 3 days. Didn't eat. Didn't stop. I changed my name in a chapel in Arkansas and never looked back." Silas nodded slowly. "Then we better be ready." That night, they doused the lamps early. Silas loaded his Winchester and set it by the door. Evelyn tucked Miss Dell's pistol into the folds of her dress. The house felt like a wound waiting to reopen. Around midnight, the dogs barked. Then came the fire. The barn lit first, an orange blossom erupting into black sky. Silas ran barefoot across the yard, rifle in hand. A shadow moved beyond the flames, ducked behind the water trough. He fired once, missed. The figure vanished into the brush. Ms. Dell dragged buckets from the well. Evelyn joined without pause, skirts tied high, arms blackened with soot. Together, they fought the flames until only smoke clung to the night. The mare was gone. The tattoo. Silas stared into the dark. "He'll come again," Evelyn said, coughing. "He ain't gonna get another chance." She turned to him. Her hair had come loose, soot streaked across her cheek, but her eyes, God, her eyes held no fear. "You believe me now?" "I did yesterday," he said. Evelyn stepped closer, inches away. "Then let's finish it." And somewhere out in the brush beyond a ruined barn, a man crouched with one bullet left in his chamber and a name in his mouth like poison. He was coming, and they would be waiting. The dawn broke bruised and purple, as if the land itself had been struck in the night. Smoke curled lazy from the blackened ribs of the barn, and the air still carried the copper tang of gunpowder. Silas sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, eyes tracing the tree line where shadows lingered too long. Evelyn emerged with 2 mugs of coffee, handing him one without a word. Her hand grazed his for half a second, rough fingers still trembling faintly. He took a sip, winced at the bitterness. She didn't smile. She never did in the mornings. "I'll take the ridge behind the paddock," he said. "I'll take the root cellar," she replied. "Too much blind angle from the hill." "You shoot steady?" "I only need 1 shot." Ms. Dell appeared behind them, wrapping a wool shawl around her shoulders. She didn't speak either. She just laid down a pouch of bullets on the porch rail, then walked off toward the pasture like it was just another day. They waited. By high sun, the quiet began to feel unbearable. No birdsong, no cicadas. Even the wind had forgotten how to speak. Evelyn sat on the cool dirt behind the cellar entrance, pistol resting in her lap, eyes closed but never asleep. She breathed in time with the land, long, patient, ready. And then a boot snapped a twig. She heard it first, didn't move. The silence after the crack was louder than any sound. Another step, then another. She opened her eyes and turned her body, slow and fluid. The man emerged from the trees like he owned the world. Tall, lean, face pitted with sun and scars. A bounty badge gleamed faintly beneath his duster. His rifle swung lazy from his shoulder, like he knew no one here could stop him. He called out, voice like gravel and blood, "Evelyn March." She stood. "I know you," he said, smiling with half his teeth. "Hell, I knew your husband. Dull-eyed son of a bitch. Shame what happened to him." Evelyn didn't answer. Her grip on the pistol tightened, finger resting near the trigger. "You're worth 200 alive. 50 dead," he said, stepping forward. "But I'm not picky." Silas stepped out from the hay shed behind him. "Then you'd best think fast." The man froze. Didn't turn. "You him?" "The new one." "I'm the last one." The rifle came up fast. Silas fired first. The shot hit low. Thigh, maybe pelvis. The man screamed, dropped to a knee, and spun wildly toward the sound. Before he could fire, Evelyn stepped out from behind the cellar. Her hands didn't shake. Not this time. She shot him clean through the chest. He slumped to the dirt like a sack of wet flour, steam curling from a wound. Silas limped forward, breath shallow. "You all right?" "I've been all right since the day I left him," she said. Ms. Dell came from the tree lean, dragging a canvas tarp. She said nothing, just helped him wrap the body, then lit the torch and laid it on the pyre with cedar and salt. The flames roared high, the smoke carrying old names into the sky. Silas sank onto the porch, blood seeping through his pants where the bullet had grazed. Evelyn dropped beside him, cradling his leg. She tore a strip from her dress hem and tied the wound tight. Her touch was fast, practiced. "I told you I only need 1 shot," she murmured. He looked at her, then really looked. "You lied about your name," he said. "I lied to survive." You gonna keep lying? No. Her voice cracked on that single syllable. She blinked hard. My name was Evelyn Marrow. I was married at 16 to a man twice my age. I left when he tried to drown me in a horse trough. You could have stayed gone. I did, until someone told me there was a man out here building fences around ghosts. I thought maybe I'd be safer near someone who buried his past proper. Silas leaned back against the porch beam, watching the fire burn. You ain't what I wanted. She gave a tired smile. Neither are you. And somehow that was enough. By evening, the sky opened with rain. Not the kind that threatened, but the kind that healed. It soaked the earth, turned ash to soil. Evelyn stood barefoot in mud, face tilted skyward, letting it wash the soot from her skin. Silas watched her from the porch, a blanket over his shoulders, his bandaged leg propped on a crate. Ms. Dell hummed low from her rocker, grinding herbs in a stone bowl, singing something old and soft in a language half lost. The wind changed direction. For the first time in years, Silas didn't dread what it carried. Evelyn came back up the steps, water dripping from her hair. She knelt beside him, took his hand in hers. "What now?" she asked. "We build a new barn," he said. "That all?" No, he looked at her, voice low. "We build something that can't burn." Her hand tightened around his. Inside, the house was quiet but warm. Outside, the land smoked and steamed and remembered. But this time it didn't resist. This time it forgave.